Welcome to the McTaggart Attack podcast. I'm Kevin McTaggart, and in this episode, I want to talk about a breakthrough I think I might have had a couple days ago. I've been very interested in the personal development, self-help genre for almost 2 years now. A little less than 2 years. We're going to say about 2 years, because why not? Because we round up, and who knows. Anyway, and I've also been interested in the entrepreneur stuff, being an entrepreneur, working for myself, doing what I love to do, getting paid to do what I love to do. I'm on a quest to have my job be to get paid for what I love to do instead of getting barely paid for what I don't really like to do. I'm sure everybody feels that way. Most people feel that way. Most people feel like their job sucks. And I'm just sick and tired of having a job that I kind of like instead of having a job that I love to do. Making money from your passion. Making money, from your passion or whatever it is. And I've listened to a lot of podcasts and watched a lot of videos, especially during this pandemic that we're going through right now. Hopefully it's over by the time if you're watching this in the future. I have a bad feeling it's not going to be over for a very long time, because right now it's December 2nd, 2020, and hopefully you're listening to this like 6 months from now and it's all gone, but I doubt that it is. But that's not what this podcast episode is about. No. I did watch this one video from YouTuber Vanessa Lau, I think, because she's somebody who quit her corporate job a few years ago. Now she allegedly makes millions on YouTube. I don't know. I don't necessarily want to make millions on YouTube. I want to make millions. I want to make enough money to survive and live on my own, doing what I love to do. I think I know what that is. Pretty sure I know what that is. Pretty sure that's stand-up comedy. Pretty sure that's podcasting and other stuff. I want multiple income streams. If anything I've learned from this pandemic, you need to have multiple income streams in the future if you want to survive, because you're going to have to live off multiple streams. That you can't just have one paycheck. You need multiple things, multiple streams of income. Okay, that's what you need. That's it. That's all you need. More. You need more than two, I think. I don't know. Right now I just have one, and I need more than one. I just want to work on more than one right now, and then we'll build from there. But anyway, in that one of those Vanessa Lau videos, she talked about podcasts that she listened to or people that she listened to, and one podcast that she listened to was the Don't Keep Your Day Job podcast by Kathy Heller. And I downloaded the podcast and listened to it a little bit, and I've listened to it a few times, and a few months ago I started listening to it, stopped listening to it, and then I started listening to it again recently. And during one of her podcast episodes, she mentioned, going to her website, kathyheller.com, which I will put a link to in the show notes, by the way. Unless I forget, then you can just remember what I said. Either you're listening to this audio-ly or video-ly. I know those aren't words, but I don't care. You're either watching this on YouTube or listening to it on the podcast. Anyway, there'll be in the show notes this information, and hopefully I will, or you'll just listen. Anyway, when I went to her website, I found this passion quiz, find your passion quiz, one of those personality type quizzes. And there were like 11 questions, and you give one answer to each question, and it tells you what personality type you are. And the personality type answer that I got back from her quiz was investigator. And I want to tell you the description of what investigator says, what it says to be an investigator according to the Kathy Heller website, which I will also put a link in the show notes. I said that already. I did say that already. But anyway, here's the description. Investigator. An investigator is the person who could spend all their hours exploring a topic that they love. They just want to have discussions about it and soak up any information they can. You don't need to be an expert on the topic, but you have a massive fascination and appreciation for it. You'd love nothing more than to get paid to research and dissect this subject all day long. Reading that description was very insightful. You know, I did find it quite insightful because I do find certain topics fascinating. There are topics that I like wanting to know about. I think I've talked in this podcast before about like being fascinated with serial killers. I would like to know more about serial killers. I could do a podcast on serial killers and talk about them. Not necessarily become an expert. That's not what the investigator description says. You're an expert. It's just something that you like talking about. That's something that I like talking about. Another thing I like talking about is professional wrestling. I love talking about professional wrestling. I could talk about professional wrestling all fucking day long. Another thing I love is Pearl Jam. I love the band Pearl Jam. I could talk about them all day long. There's lots of stuff out there that I could talk about all day long. And it's got me thinking, though, another aspect of the investigator type thing. I like to know more about these things. There's things that I like to know more about. Like, I'd like to know how things work backstage in wrestling or behind the scenes type stuff. I'm always fascinated with how stuff came to be. You know, I'm always fascinated with how things became the way that they were. You know, and I've sort of done that with this podcast. I've sort of talked about topics that I didn't know anything about, so I wanted to know more about it. I have this yearning to know more about things than most people know about. I want to know more about stuff. I want to know more information, like behind the scenes, why things were done, why things came about the way that they did. That's what I want to do. That's something that excites me, is finding about things, researching things. I like to research things. I like to research topics to find out what they're all about, what constructs them, what puts them together. That's something that I find interesting, and it's got me thinking that I may want to take this podcast in a different direction, or more in a direction that it sort of already has been, if you know what I'm trying to say. Like, there's stuff out there that interests me. Like, I'm interested in the construction of things, not the physical construction, but like how things work, like in the backstage type stuff, behind the scenes type stuff, like how stuff comes to be. That's what interests me. I mean, yes, there are topics that I find interesting, but there's also topics that I want to know more about, that I'm interested in, and I want to spend more time talking about stuff that interests me, or stuff that I would like to know more about. And I think this podcast is going to contain me talking more about stuff that I want to know more about. Because I hate not knowing about stuff. Don't you hate not knowing? I hate not knowing. And I do find it very interesting that I got the investigator type because I've always wanted to be an investigator. Finding out why things happened. You know, researching it, finding out what the deal with it is, stuff like that. And that doesn't necessarily fit the definition that Kathy Heller has on her website, but it certainly has stirred something in me. Like I couldn't sleep Monday night because I was thinking about this and what I could do with this, and I'm very excited to see what I can do with this investigator personality type because I want to be able to investigate things. Not necessarily right wrongs or whatever, but that would be great. Right injustices, stuff. Not right injustices, but right stuff that not necessarily that. True crime is something that I'm interested in. I want to know more about cases. I always want to know more about things. That's the thing with me. I always want to know more. I hate being naive and not knowing what's going on and just being, oh, okay, well, that's just the way it is. But why is it that way? I want to know why about these things. I've always considered myself an investigator type, and thanks to Kathy Heller's website, it's proved it validates it for me, and I'm gonna take some steps to further that investigator type, and that's what I wanted to talk about in this podcast episode. Like I said, I will put that description in the show notes, and that's all I've got for this week. For today's episode, I said this week's episode. This podcast comes out Monday through Friday. You can find me on social media at McTaggart Attack on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, and the email address is McTaggartAttack@gmail.com, and go find wingmanoftheyear.com where you can get fantastic t-shirts like this. Product placement. I'm doing it right, I think. I don't know. And that's the bottom line if you smell what the McTaggart Attack podcast is cooking.